It was during a Democratic debate last weekend that Hillary Clinton came out swinging against Donald Trump.
He is becoming ISIS's best recruiter. They are going to people showing videos of Donald Trump insulting Islam and Muslims in order to recruit more radical jihadists.
But there's no evidence of any such video. Trump pushed back hard, and many journalists said Clinton was wrong.
I will demand an apology from Hillary. She should apologize. She lies about emails. She lies about Whitewater. She lies about everything.
I'm was flabbergasted to hear Hillary Clinton make that claim and bring up the thing about recruiting Muslims to attack the United States with Trump or whatever.
Everyone understands that what Hillary Clinton said might not be true right now at this moment, but it is likely to become true.
But that whole controversy got wiped out by a media explosion over Trump using this Yiddish expression.
But she was going to beat, she was favored to win, and she got schlonged. She lost. She lost.
Trump insisted there was nothing controversial about the street term and blamed the mainstream media for distorting it.
Donald, you're likable, but I tell you, when I sort of gasp when I hear you making sort of bathroom jokes about Secretary Clinton, or anyone.
Well, I think I'm presidential, and I think I've done presidential work.
Joining us now to analyze this strange turn in the campaign coverage, Jonah Goldberg, editor-at-large for National Review Online and a Fox News contributor. Susan Faricio, chief congressional correspondent for the Washington Examiner. And Joe Trippi, a Democratic strategist and Fox News contributor. Jonah, how is it in this vital presidential campaign, when we're talking about terrorism and the economy, that we all get consumed by a debate over the meaning of this Yiddish word that I didn't know was a verb?
I suspected it was a verb. I just didn't think you could use it as a verb in that context. Look, I don't get consumed by it. I've developed a sort of a callus about a lot of that kind of stuff that Trump does. But I think that it's because it's ratings driven, it's fun, it's easy, it doesn't require a lot of explanations, and the media are suckers for it.
Catnip. Well, Susan, Trump, as I mentioned, blaming the media for creating this controversy. He says this is a Yiddish term that merely means beaten badly, although it does have another meaning. As recently as 2011, an NPR host used it on the air and there was no uproar.
Well, there is truth to that. It is sometimes used in an alternative form, but there is an argument to be made that he did mean it in a different way this time, and no one's really sure. The fact is that really Trump can say just about anything. He can say just about anything in this campaign, and it's A-OK in the primary season. I just question how much judgment will fall upon him in the general election when he's dealing with a whole other group of voters. But in the primary season, he can get away with it.
Let's talk about the reaction from the Hillary camp. Hillary Clinton tweeting it's not the first time he's demonstrated a penchant for sexism. Jennifer Palmieri, her communications director, actually, Hillary said that. This is the tweet from Palmieri. The humiliation this degrading language inflicts on all women. So if the term isn't all that bad, why all this war on women stuff, Joe?
Well, look, this helps the Hillary camp, right? To get in a fight with Donald Trump in the Democratic primary is, you talk about catnip for the media, it works for her. And so this whole...
So the more that we make out of it, the better it is for Hillary Clinton?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All of this benefits both Trump and her. And the more the media... Look, Trump offends. The more the media gets offended by it, the more anybody who is the person that got hit by him is offended by it. The more people out there who are offended at the whole political process in this country who are for him dig in harder and cheer him on. So this is like a self-reinforcing kabuki game between the press, Trump, and his opponents, and it works.
So I'm looking at where this goes next. I've heard a couple of pundits say, and now Donald Trump himself talking about Bill Clinton. Trump tweeting, for example, that letting her husband out to campaign, he's demonstrated a penchant for sexism, so inappropriate. And then on Fox and Friends this morning, Trump again brought up Bill Clinton and some of the troubles of his presidency.
Well, and I think that's absolutely fair game in the sense that, first of all, Hillary Clinton has been just of late, tweeting and issuing statements about how alleged victims of sex crimes should always be believed and always be given the benefit of the doubt. Well, that standard creates some certain problems for Bill Clinton, who has got a lot of alleged victims in his past.
What about the fact that Bill Clinton is not running for president this time, although obviously he would live in the White House if his wife were to be elected?
I don't know that that's obvious either, but I think that You can't, look, she is running in large part on her legacy of who her husband was. She's constantly talking about how what they did when they were in the White House. Bill Clinton ran in 1992, was 2 for the price of 1. She would never have been a senator had she not been First Lady. She talks about the Clinton record more than she talks about the Obama record. You can't somehow separate her. She just recently said she's not going to be called Hillary Rodham Clinton anymore, just Hillary Clinton. You cannot take Bill Clinton out of the Hillary Clinton equation.
But as a journalistic question, how is it Hillary's fault that her husband messed around, as we know he did repeatedly in the past and while he was in the White House?
I think voters will judge her as someone who tolerated it and as someone who may have, in some cases, defended it. And I think that's her real problem. There is talk and evidence that she did defend him, and she did.
Well, clearly she defended him, and then her version, Susan, is that she was deceived by her husband, that she did not know. You say she tolerated him.
Well, there were a lot of things happening where you can only claim ignorance for so long, and that calls into question her own character, her own strength as a leader. But I think getting into this whole issue of sexism, for the media to just go after Trump as sexist is very superficial. I think you have to look at him as a CEO, as what he's been doing his whole life. The Washington Post did a great story about Trump as a CEO. You had to wait till the 7th paragraph in the story before they finally say many people who worked for him said he was ahead of his time in promoting women. That's where you get into the real substance of sexism.
Look, I think the most fascinating thing about this, regardless of whether Clinton's fair game or Bill Clinton's fair game or not, is how Trump first deflects and how he does it. These were tweets. He literally just does.
He's got 5 million followers,
right.
and so when he tweets, it makes news.
No,
and
it goes. That's one of the big differences of this cycle, is that he's absolutely able to create media firestorm, media controversy with a simple 140 characters, and he doesn't even use them all.
But of course, I'll just make the obvious point that all of the presidential candidates are on Twitter, but most of them don't use it as a provocative tool the way that Trump does. But
they treat him. Trump benefits or is hurt by, you can pick your standard, by a standard that we don't apply to a lot of other politicians who say absolutely ridiculous things. Joe Biden says insane and ridiculous things. He's the vice president of the United States. He does it, and every time he says something crazy, oh, that's Joe. It's maybe a half-hour story, not even a whole day of a story.
So you're saying the media, and I know you're not a huge Trump fan, you're saying the media are too hard on Donald Trump in comparison to the way journalists cover other politicians?
I'm saying that the media are too eager to play Donald Trump's game. He gets to change the subject every time he's in trouble to some other controversial thing. Everyone gets their dresses over their head over the latest crazy thing that he says, and that plays to his advantage.
All politicians try to change the subject when they're on the defensive. Trump just seems to be better at it.
No, but if Bernie Sanders could deliver 11 million viewers every time he said something controversial, there'd be plenty of people on media putting him on.
This whole attack, this whole debate, silly as it might be over the Yiddish word and so forth, completely wiped out, which was some pretty critical coverage of Hillary Clinton for saying in that debate, we showed it at the top, there were Donald Trump videos being used by ISIS terrorists as a recruitment tool. And that's just not true.
Well, I mean, that's true. He literally stepped on his own story. I mean, he could have. She should have stopped at. His words are going to be used
as a recruitment tool. That's a fair political argument whether it's true or not. But to say there were videos,
I'm not. But he takes everybody's gaze off of that and brings makes it about something else.
And Susan, this was a situation where she did not correct the record. She did not backtrack. They went on the offensive. It was kind of like taking a page from the Trump playbook, and the media, I think, kind of let her get away with that.
You know why? I think just the news cycle has changed so much, just even between the last 2 elections, that it's one controversy a week, and then that's all the public really can tolerate. That's all they have the attention span for. So even if this whole controversy about the Yiddish slang didn't come along, I think we would have been on to another subject, another controversy, just because of the nature of the news.
On Twitter, it's one controversy an hour. All right. So
first, though, we want to get more on this bipartisan budget deal. It's just the beginning of Congress overcoming divisions to pass legislation. Or will lawmakers revert to their old ways and accomplish very little in the new year? Fox News senior correspondent Eric Shawn joins us with that angle. Eric, good morning to you.
Good morning, Maria, and good morning, everyone. It's a new year, and Speaker Paul Ryan promises a renewed Republican agenda. But with congressional approval ratings in the basement, Congress has nowhere to go but up.
I do want to thank Congress for ending the year on a high note.
An optimist in the Oval Office and in the Speaker's chair.
Next year, we're going to do things differently. Next year, when we have a fresh start, we're doing things differently because I don't think this is the way that we should be governing.
Well, that fresh start begins in a few days with the budget wrapped up, attention focusing on terrorism and national security and reflecting the themes of the presidential campaign. Democrats will focus on gun control, income inequality, and criminal justice reform, where Republicans will again tackle the issues of Obamacare, refugees, and defunding Planned Parenthood.
We owe the country a better agenda, a better way forward. We owe the country a fresh approach, a new plan, and that's what we're going to do.
But Speaker Ryan does have his work cut out for him. The Real Clear Politics average has congressional approval at only 13%, but that is not the lowest ever. In February 2014, Congress hit a rock-bottom 6% approval rating in one poll, meaning it has only been improving. And even the president, not known for his endorsement of congressional Republicans, was praising them and their new boss for finding some common ground despite the anger of some conservative members.
I think it's a good working relationship. We recognize that we disagree on a whole bunch of other stuff, but perhaps because even before he was elected he had worked on Capitol Hill, I think he is respectful of the process and respectful of how legislation works.
Well, the key test of the atmosphere on Capitol Hill comes on January 12th. That will be President Obama's last State of the Union, which in itself already puts many congressional Republicans in a much better mood. Maria?
Yeah, that's true, Eric. Thank you so much.
The first week of Congress in the new year will look oddly like the last few weeks this year. Obamacare and funding for Planned Parenthood all on the agenda. Contributor for thedailybanner.com, Garland Nixon, Republican strategist Kevin Sheridan, here to talk about what's coming up. Kevin, first to you. You're an old Paul Ryan guy. Is the Speaker going to keep going down the rabbit trail of trying to defund Obamacare and all these kinds of things, or are we going to finally see some bills on things that everyone in Congress can agree about?
Well, I don't know that everyone in Congress is ever going to agree about everything, but what we're going to see, I think, is a bold Republican agenda, a conservative agenda that's different from the last 7 years of very liberal Obama policies. And so I think you'll see a real repeal and replace of Obamacare finally. I think you'll see border security. I think you'll start to see the outlines of what an actual conservative agenda will look like. Now, whether or not anything actually gets done in 2016, I would tend to agree with Steve Moore that, you know, it's going to be kind of more of the same and we're going to be standing in place for a while. But I think, you know, when we get to 2017 and we get a Republican president, hopefully, they'll have an agenda to act on, and that's what Paul Ryan's going to use 2016 to do.
All right, so Garland, the House is going to only be in session, at least as of now, for 111 days next year. Never mind that a lot of us would love a job where we're only working 111 days. But when you hear what Kevin's saying is coming down the pipeline, if that stuff gets passed, it gets vetoed by the president, does that play well for the Democrats come November in the race for the White House, or is it something that the president may have to compromise once or twice?
Well, you know, believe it or not, I'm not going to necessarily agree with him. I think that the budget deal in October has set the table for some real reform. I do think, contrary to what a lot of people believe, that there will be some bipartisan agreement. I mean, right now, Cory Booker, Mike Lee, Chuck Grassley, all senators are working on some criminal justice reform. They've got the higher education bill. I think this year there is an opportunity for some real reform, and I think it's going to happen. I don't agree with him that it's just going to be a year of politics as usual.
Kevin, does it make sense at some point to bring some bills that everyone can agree on, TPP, criminal justice reform, those kinds of things that can actually have a chance of getting through, maybe an authorization of military force against ISIS, and actually have things signed into law, show the country that the Republicans in control of the House and Senate can get things done?
Well, I think if you take each one of those, there's problems with each one of those. I think Senator McConnell has shown, or Majority Leader McConnell has shown some some hesitation on acting on some of those. And, you know, the Obama administration has not really laid out a clear and cohesive strategy for Iraq and Syria. So whether or not they can act on either of those things, they may never happen. And so I think, look, TPP would be nice. TPP would be something that they could probably get, some bipartisan support on. But that's got to, they've got to get there, and they're not there right now.
Garland, how does this play for the Democrats? Is it worth as the Democrats allowing the Republicans to fight amongst themselves and to try to put forth things like defunding Obamacare, things that are going to be vetoed? Or is it better to try, as the Democrats did at least right at the end in terms of the latest spending bill, work with Republicans on things that they can come together on?
Well, you know, I have to agree with what the president said many years ago, and that is good policy is good politics. And I think it benefits the Democrats to try to get some of the, particularly criminal justice reform, some of the other things. Let's not forget there are things they have to deal with. We've got the Puerto Rican debt crisis. So I think it benefits the Democrats in that they can say we're a responsible party, but I think it also I think it also benefits the Republicans because they've got to be able to show that they can govern. I don't think anyone's going to be better off if they just play the bickering game and nothing gets done.
All right, so Kevin, what is the messaging we're going to see coming from Speaker Ryan now in terms of trying to convince the American public that the Republicans are actually doing things, even though they may not be able to get it signed into law by the president?
Well, to go back to criminal justice reform, I do think there is some bipartisan support for that. And so that may be somewhere, it's pretty undefined right now what that would actually look like. But so they may be able to go back on that. In terms of big picture items for, or big picture for Paul Ryan, his Confident America speech was really where he wants the Republican Party to go. And I think hopefully that hands off to a presidential nominee that can carry it forward. But it's big, bold change. It's big ideas again. We've got to get back to big ideas. And if that means some of this legislation has to sit for a while, so be it. He's trying to set up an agenda that the American people can actually, an alternative agenda from the last 7 years that the American people can get behind and that we can actually win on in November.
Well, we'll see if they get behind it. We'll see if you guys win in November. Kevin, Garland, appreciate it, gentlemen. Happy New Year.